Canada's new federal vaping regulations, Senate Bill S5, is entering the consultation phase, where much of the nitty-gritty details are to be worked out. The next several months will prove critical for the future of vaping in Canada, as government, industry, public health, and legal experts meet to explore options and to lock down the final form of the new rules and regs. The draft legislation is sweeping, and since it covers what is essentially a brand new industry, it also presents a challenge, finding regulatory experts to provide objective third-party analysis and comment. Joining us today to provide just such analysis is Rajeev Sharma, managing partner at Sharma Lawyers. On behalf of his clients, Rajeev has extensive experience working with Health Canada, the Ontario Ministry of Health, and other provincial governments on a variety of healthcare files covering pharmaceutical advertising and marketing, medical devices, medical marijuana, and consumer natural health products. Rajeev, thanks for joining us. First off, when you look at the draft vaping regulations, do you see any similarities with the regulations in product categories you deal with?
These regulations look, feel, and sound a lot like regulations that deal with pharmaceutical products. Absolutely. I see a lot of analogies.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, where you stand depends on where you sit, I guess. But I think as a first step, the move by Health Canada to regulate these products is I think a good move. And I think regulating it as opposed to legislating it into oblivion or a prohibition on vaping would have been the wrong move, I believe, for Health Canada to take, as other jurisdictions have done. So I think that's a positive. I think the devil's going to be in the details. Let's see what the legislation ultimately looks like, because we have draft legislation, but that's going to be subject to a lot of discussion and debate amongst lawyers and policy analysts in the Senate in terms of the committees that will look at it, and that'll be the really important phase of this, is not what's there now, but what comes out the other end.
Rajeev, what comes out in the end is framed by what first went in. So what's your opinion on the draft regs as they stand now?
I think the regulations are again, very familiar to somebody who does the work that I do. They're very prescriptive, and they're very, very restrictive in the sense that you're not allowed to advertise or make any health claims about vaping. You're not allowed to make a certain quality-related claims, not just health-related claims or quality-related claims or product-related claims. They've taken a very broad brush here and taken those regulations which absolutely prohibit advertising, is essentially what they've done, like tobacco. You can't talk about it as a lifestyle thing or a choice to make it cool for those that are underage, which is the policy rationale behind why you would do something like that for nicotine, for example. They've applied essentially that same basis to vaping. And so I would say, again, as a relatively objective observer in this industry, it's good news that they haven't killed it, but it's sort of sitting in a wheelchair and waiting to know or waiting to see if it's going to walk or talk. Because right now, even though it's not gone, it's significantly impaired the ability of those in the industry to actually get their message out in terms of the potential benefits of vaping.
And that's really the rub when it comes down to the new regs, isn't it? While they legalize vaping, the restrictions on advertising and communications mean it would be almost impossible to reach smokers with any positive information about vaping.
Yeah, I mean, the regulations taken alone, you wouldn't find out the benefits of vaping, and that's something that the Minister of Health federally and those provincially have to wrestle with. And so far, I think there has been some pretty credible evidence out of the UK in particular to suggest that the benefits of the vaping is at least 95% safer than smoking combustible cigarettes. So, we don't know the answer yet. I mean, the jury in some respects is probably still out because it's so new, but I think it behooves our regulators provincially and federally to look at the science and look at the development of the science behind vaping to ensure that if we can get people to stop smoking and move to vaping, that's a very good thing, not only from a public health perspective, but from a public finance perspective, I think. And those are issues that are top of mind, I think, for everyone, provincially and federally.
Rajeev, in part 2 of our discussion, we'll dive into a couple of specific sections in Bill S5, restricting advertising and communications. Let me ask you now if you think government is taking the right approach, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's still a chance these regs could change.
That's right. I mean, that's the point of this next process that we're going through, is to make sure that experts are before the legislators in the Senate committees, and to make sure that they understand that an absolute prohibition on advertising may not be the right answer. So, the one-size-fits-all approach to tobacco, to medical marijuana, to you name it, to pharmaceuticals, may not be the right approach for vaping. Vaping is a bit of a different animal. If you, for a moment, accept the premise that those who are vaping are those trying to quit smoking, even if you can move the dial 1 or 2 or 3% and get 3% of smokers off cigarettes and onto vaping, surely that's a message that needs to be communicated to smokers, if indeed we have the data and we have the backup to give the ministers and the professionals to understand that regulation of that should not be a ban of the advertising, of the ability to advertise by the vaping industry. It should somehow regulate it, not ban it.
Rajeev, are there any examples from the regulation of pharmaceuticals in Canada that the vaping industry could draw on?
We do have a blanket ban on advertising drugs in Canada. You can only advertise what's called name, price, and quantity of the drug. You can't tell the individual what the drug is for example. So that leaves only, the Viagra and the Cialis type ads, which you don't really have to tell people what it's for because people can quite figure that out. You don't see any other advertising in the Canadian marketplace. Now, the regulations do permit pharmaceutical companies to go and speak to healthcare professionals, pharmacists, and others who are a key conduit to this infrastructure in our healthcare system, who need to know the information, and we are allowed to talk to them about the specifics. So maybe borrowing from that in the pharmaceutical industry, the professionals should carve out some exceptions in the vaping business of how we can get critical information as the science develops, and whatever the science is at the moment, to those who need to have it, i.e. smokers.
Right, and through an intermediary at least.
Through an intermediary at the very least.
Well, that's it for this edition of RegWatch. Stay tuned for part 2 of our interview with Rajeev Sharma, to be released shortly. In the meantime, please don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For RegulatorWatch.com, I'm Brent Stafford.